Change my mind. Change my mind.
Hi, I'm Linda Steele. Welcome to the podcast, Change My Mind. Do you remember when social media used to be fun? When it used to be social, which was the whole point? It feels like that was a very long time ago, and it's left me with kind of I was going to say love-hate, but it's more like a like-hate. And sometimes it's hate-hate, social media, a relationship with it, especially when we talk about Twitter. And yes, I'm still calling it Twitter. I think X is a stupid name, and I don't like the guy that bought the company. So Twitter it is. But Twitter used to be fun. And when I joined in like 2009, so a long time ago, this was a brand new platform. Nobody really knew how it worked. It was exciting. I thought it was great. But, I mean, it was also a slippery slope because it could be a dangerous place when things went viral. And I did actually contribute to the death, sadly, of Canadian folk icon Gordon Lightfoot. And it wasn't really my fault because I saw this tweet from our parliamentary bureau chief at Global National. And he said Gordon Lightfoot is dead. And he had it confirmed from his family. And I thought, oh my, there's a huge story. And I retweeted it and said, oh, we've lost an icon. Well, Gordon Lightfoot was in a car at the time and he was listening to himself on the radio with somebody saying, oh, Gordon Lightfoot is dead. And he was like, not dead. So the bosses at Global were not thrilled. It wasn't my fault. It was a mistake. I don't know how this happened. But my boss became really super risk averse with social media as it applied to the people in the newsroom. And he spent way too much time trolling through my Twitter account to see what was I saying and who was I saying it to and was I giving away any global state secrets. And it got to be so annoying for both of us, frankly, that I just killed my account. And then I restarted it because I moved to a different market in Vancouver, had moved there from Edmonton, new station, needed to rebuild a profile. So I started up a Twitter account again and got right back into it, booking guests, meeting people, promoting things I was working on, and I was having fun again. And then Elon Musk bought the company and ruined it, in my opinion, for people like me and millions of others. He said he wanted to do it to protect free speech. And I thought, well, maybe protect free hate speech because good Lord, I mean, Twitter has just descended and started swirling the drain and just become this cesspool of bots and trolls and angry people and racists and misogynists. And it's like a nightmare. And also there are hackers on there. And I had my Twitter account hacked. How you say, too long of a story. Let's just say it took me about a week to get access to it again, but not before the hacker was posting crypto, scam tweets under my name. And it took me a week to get Twitter to sort of resolve things. People say to me, Linda, why do you stay on this platform? And honestly, I've been asking myself that question. Despite the fact that it is a bit of a topsy-turvy place right now, I have started to be a little bit more ruthless about controlling my environment. I never used to block people on social media because when you worked for a media company, that's what the trolls wanted, that they were getting under your skin. So they would screen grab that you'd block them and then they'd post it and they'd say, oh, Linda Steele can't take it. And she's such a bitch. And it wasn't worth it, right? So I didn't. But now I am a freelancer and I'm not beholden to any media company. And so if you're going to come at me swinging for no reason, I don't know who you are. It's not apropos of anything. I don't even know what you're talking about, but you're just looking for a fight and you're coming at me and you're calling me the C word and your handle is MagaJoe666. I am like blockety, blockety, block. You are out of my environment. I don't need your negativity and I won't tolerate it. And you could say, oh, well, now you're just in an echo chamber. No, I'm not. I mean, I am perfectly willing and have every single day had a conversation with a total stranger that was civil and interesting. And maybe we didn't agree. It didn't really matter. So my observation, though, is that after the 2 decades that I've been on this platform, is that the loudest, angriest voices are usually middle-aged white dudes. And I'm not sure why, but As people have tried to shame me into quitting, I have thought to myself, God damn it, I am stubborn and I was here first and I want to be here long after Elon Musk has shot off to the moon in a rocket or been fired or gone to jail or sold the company or whatever. I was here first when Twitter was civil, when it was social media, and I want to be here long after Elon Musk is gone. And hopefully there'll be a return to civility. Maybe, maybe not. Or maybe I'll change my mind after we talk to the guest today about social media and some of the ills and just, the challenges. So, to sort of dig into this conversation, I want to invite our producer, Melanie Nagy, in because I know that, Mel, you as well professionally have had a Twitter account. I haven't seen you on it lately. So where's your head at around social media writ large?
Yeah, I find it so interesting. I mean, I just admire your determination to stay in that space because I know you're active because I do pop in there every once in a while to answer your question. So like you, social media, particularly Twitter, now X, it was a place that we were encouraged from our bosses. Get out there, promote your story, engage. And in the beginning, it was great. And I felt like I did have healthy conversations about the stories I covered from that lens of a journalist. It was never about being in a personal space for me. I also really liked it because I got to see what other people were covering. And I got to tap into news around the world and experts and find, like you said, guests. So I did like that. But I have to say, even while I was an active journalist, near the end before I transitioned out, I did start to pull back because I was feeling that toxicity. It was feeling like it was just trolls in there, cyber bots. And since I've left, honestly, I only pop in now again, perhaps more now since we've started our podcast, but I'm not engaging. It looks like I don't even know the last time I tweeted. Maybe I think I might have retweeted something you did. For me, other social media spaces like Facebook, I even pulled back from. Instagram, I had a very public Instagram. I closed that when I left to make it more private. So I think, unlike you, which I said I admire, I've retreated. I have pulled back and I'm struggling to find the value in it. But I hear you what you're saying. I mean, it feels like by me not being there, am I giving the space to the trolls? Should I still be in there trying to demonstrate good behavior? I don't know. So from what I'm hearing from you, though, you're willing to stick it in, but you're open to maybe leaving. Is that kind of what I'm hearing from your take?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot, especially after this crypto hacker nonsense. And you're starting to wonder, what is the value? For me, I'm just such a lifelong news hound that I have carefully curated a group of journalists and news organizations and pundits that over time I've come to respect their opinions. And I just love to go to one place and boom, 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 see what is going on around the world, especially for breaking news. It's a little more challenging these days because of AI and because of bad actors who are trying to deliberately confuse, inflame, quickly retweeting something that's completely inaccurate because suddenly the world has a lack of critical thinking skills. But I'm on the bubble, let's say. I'm still finding value, but it would not take me much to push me over the line to go, I think I'm done. I think I've wasted enough time with this.
Well, I think to help you navigate that, we have a perfectly positioned guest. Joining us will be Carmi Levy. He's a well-known Canadian tech journalist and analyst who has built a career unpacking how the digital world is quietly, and sometimes, particularly lately, not so quietly reshaping our real one. Now, throughout his years navigating the ever-evolving world of technology, he's not only spoken on essential issues, but advised on them. He's talked about what we're talking about today, social media toxicity. He's talked about the influence of algorithms, and more recently, the heated debate around regulating platforms, especially when it comes to young people. You've probably heard him, and our listeners have probably heard him on radio and television across Canada, where he's known for making sense of the chaos and bringing it back to what it means for everyday life. So I really think if anyone, Linda, can help you cut through the social media noise and the toxicity, it's Carmi.
I am so looking forward to this. And then I'm looking forward to having a bit of a debrief with you, Mel. So stand back and we'll bring the guest in.
Sounds good.
Carmi Levy, thank you so much for spending time with us because I know you're the go-to guy for all things social media. So it's a real pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on, Linda. I really appreciate the invitation.
So I'm in a weird zone. I'm on the bubble. Do I stay with social media, especially Twitter, because that's the one that I mostly use, or do I get off? And honestly, I ask myself this question a couple times a week. I'm curious to know from your point of view, how would you describe Twitter or X right now as we speak?
I would say it's a hellscape. And it's getting worse by the time. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to use that word, but
Yes, you are.
since the moment Elon Musk said he was going to buy it, when he walked into the headquarters in San Francisco, holding a toilet or whatever, you knew that things were going to change, and they have, and not for the better. He fired all the human moderators. He dialed down the digital protections, the algorithms that would keep things like extremist or hate speech away from users, and he dialed up the algorithm to amplify extreme views to the point that now if you have a moderate voice, it's almost impossible for you to find your audience. He made the platform a pay-to-play proposition where if you pay them $8 a month to be verified, your content has a better chance of finding an audience. Otherwise, it gets round-filed by the algorithm. So what used to be the town square of the internet, probably the most social of all the social media platforms, has transformed in a few short years into the least social of all the social media platforms, to the point that you no longer go to it to find out what's going on. It's no longer the pulse of the internet, that town square. It is now, quite frankly, a highly toxic landscape where you are more likely to be attacked than to be informed.
Well, there's so much in there. So let's kind of break it down and talk about the algorithms. A, what are they? And B, what are they designed to do in terms of riling everybody up?
In the early days of social media, the calculus was very simple. You follow other people, they follow you, you become friends with them. It was social. And so you built your network, and then everyone just kind of spoke around each other. It was very sort of, country camp like kumbaya. But then as algorithms took over, and an algorithm is little more than a piece of software designed to ensure that content finds an audience. And so as algorithms began to take over, and it happened around the same time that these platforms decided, well, now that we've got millions of people using us, we now have to make money off of them. So the algorithm was the answer. Make sure that, content gets surfaced, finds an audience, that it connects to their ad campaigns so that ads get served up to the right people. They know what you're talking about, what you're interested in. The algorithm ensures that if you're an advertiser, you can now find an audience with content. And so over time, those algorithms, they started off fairly benign, but they have been dialed up over time to the point that most of what you see now on these platforms, X as well as others, is algorithmically suggested. So it's no longer about who your friends are, what they're up to. If you look at the typical X or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok feed, it isn't the people that you follow. It's ads. It's suggested content in many cases. It's AI generated content, because it's all about keeping you engaged on the platform for as long as possible so they can serve up ever more ads, generate more revenue off of you. It's no longer about having that great user experience. It's about generating advertising impressions, and the algorithm is the piece of software, the code that makes all of this possible.
And does the algorithm reward outrage?
It absolutely does, because if you can think of social media as a landscape where there's a lot of noise, you have to scream ever louder in order to be heard. So in the world of algorithms, the things that get the attention of the software, of the code, are the things that stand out. The rage bait, the clickbait, the hyperbolic headlines and videos that are completely off the charts. That's the stuff that goes viral. And it doesn't go viral by accident. It goes viral because the algorithms are tuned to identify content like that and make sure that as many people see it. Because the reason being, if there's content out there, it's a matter of picking the stuff that people want to see, or maybe they don't want to see it, but it's almost like a car accident. They'll stick around to watch it even if they know it isn't good for them. That's what the algorithms are doing, making sure that it's constantly finding an audience. And that's why it isn't sometimes you'll see something that was posted even a while ago, so it wasn't recent, but it sure found a really big audience, and the algorithms are still trying to beat that thing so that more people still see it.
And, we're seeing a lot more AI generated content. And
Hmm.
I've been caught a couple times. You think, oh my gosh, and then you little critical thinking skills and you think, hang on a second, you look, and it turns out a lot of this stuff is not real, not accurate, and designed to make people upset and angry or whatever it's trying to do. I think that's really frightening because we're in such a polarized time right now. And there's people just, ready to leap at a moment's notice because they're just so overstimulated and angry. How do you see the role of AI right now? I mean, this could cause wars and affect elections and do so many negative things.
We already had a raging fire going beforehand. AI is simply adding more fuel onto that fire. It is making it so there are bad actors out there who want to create rage bait, who want things to go viral, who want to benefit from controversy because then they can get lots of followers. That's how they make money. That's how some people build their careers. That's how businesses are built. Just you have a huge audience and you just feed them content all day long, no matter how outrageous or insane or incorrect or deepfaked it is. Add AI into the mix, and it allows them to do that at an even greater scale. No longer do you have to go out and shoot a legitimate video. No longer do you have to write a script for it or even have a studio to produce it. You just type it into a prompt, the video gets created, and then you can distribute it at scale. And so it allows this kind of activity, which was around before AI happened, to happen at a much larger scale, to the point now that when you go into a social media platform and you scroll through your feed, the majority of that content is in fact AI generated because there are individuals who have recognized the opportunity, and they don't care about informing anyone. They don't care about doing the right thing or creating community. All they care about is having as many followers as they can, generate as much revenue off of that as they can for whatever purpose they wish. So it's no longer about serving the needs of you and me and everyone else who just wants to get good stuff on social media. It's about making sure that their digital empires get bigger by the day. And if AI makes it easier to do that, then so be it.
And so when we see a video of Donald Trump flying a plane and spewing feces over a bunch of Democrats protesting, that's one thing you can tell clearly that's fake. But now it's getting harder to tell what's real and what's not real because AI is growing and progressing so quickly that you used to be able to look for the watermark or it said Sora or whatever. Now there are times when, and I can be caught if I'm looking quickly, but you have to stop yourself and look and say, wait a minute, let me question this. Are there any tells when it comes to social media or AI generated content?
Yeah, the fidelity is getting so good with each successive generation that even when you lean in, even if you know which tells to look for, it's becoming increasingly difficult to do so. And of course, there aren't any standards for labeling. And so it's not a very transparent process. When you see a video, it's not like there is a watermark there in many cases saying this is an AI video. And in many cases, of course, those same bad actors who are trying to generate as much outrage as possible, they benefit from that because you're more likely to see something if it isn't labeled AI. If I saw an AI watermark, I would just keep going on. But sometimes I have been tricked. I see it, I look at it, and then I go, oh, I've been had, and you move on. The answer to that, of course, is to take the time to understand where does this video come from? Look at the account. What kind of account is it? Do I know who they are? Can I trace it back to its origins? And in many cases, those unlabeled AI videos that have incredible fidelity, we often can't tell their origins, and that itself is another tell. And as we go forward and the tools get even better and the videos become even more realistic, that's pretty much the only thing we as consumers have to fall back on. And it's a terrible place to be. Believe everything that you see at first glance, and then do your homework to make sure that you believe it, and only believe it if you're absolutely certain that you've done everything you can to validate. It's honestly, it's sad that in 2026, this is where we are.
Yeah, no kidding. And frightening, really.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about some of the bad actors. and there are many, but let's look at bad foreign actors. And we recently saw with X that they had changed I don't know if it's an algorithm, but they changed it so you could click here and then see where that account was based. Yeah. So some troll account that claimed to be a Canadian, they're actually coming out of Turkey or something. Who are those people? What is their intent? Is it usually election interference?
It's a pretty wide range of agendas. And so in some cases, they could be politically motivated to sow dissent within another country. And it's kind of easy to do that when you're halfway around the world because there's no law that can touch you. The code does not stop. Code and data don't stop at a national border. And so, very easy to build a capability like that at scale and then sort of sow dissent within Canada. We're seeing the same thing play out with Alberta separation. Now there's a rise in videos that are deepfake videos spewing misinformation and disinformation, likely coming from outside of Alberta, in many cases in the US. And so it could be political. It could be economic. It could simply be hackers who are jumping onto the topic du jour and using that as a way of targeting a large audience and generating a lot of activity that then in turn generates revenue. So it could be money. It could also be geopolitical. It could be countries who use state-sponsored cyber insecurity to advance their geopolitical aims. And we know that China and Russia and Iran and North Korea are four of the most significant purveyors of this kind of cyber insecurity. And they will use deep fakes, artificial intelligence tools, and other forms of cyber attacks and sort of cyber subterfuge to advance their aims. And so it almost doesn't matter where it's coming from because it's a 360-degree problem, and it all tends to show up in all of our inboxes and all of our feeds. It doesn't matter who you are. You can just be the average Canadian, and chances are you have already seen every example from all of those sources in your own feed.
And what about bad actors like the white nationalists or incels, people who are kind of trolling around? Either that's their, gathering space or they're trying to recruit new members. That's scary too.
Yeah, we have seen ample evidence of these organizations that used to live in the shadows, we sort of felt, well, they're not going to find an audience because they don't have the tools to do that. Conventional media has essentially locked them out. Well, thanks to social media, they can now reach audiences that previously would have been unreachable. And so they are barely under the radar, plying their trade and creating community, whereas previously they had difficulty doing exactly that. Already we're seeing here in Canada that some of these groups, I believe there's one 764, it's an acknowledged terrorist group that has been using social media to create that kind of community as well. And so we owe it to ourselves to watch for that kind of activity and flag it wherever we see it. As consumers, when you see content like that, you're part of that solution. You need to make sure that you're flagging it to the platform so that the algorithms can be tuned to recognize this kind of content and slow down the velocity with which it spreads. Unfortunately, there are some platforms like X that seems to be their stock in trade. And so if you're an Elon Musk, you're happy that you don't really care about the ethics of who's using the platform because all you care about, you got a lot more people on the platform. They're much more engaged. They're spending more time. It doesn't matter if they're trying to overthrow the government or, start a race war. That's really good for business when you're in the social media business. And perversely, that seems to be sort of the case as we watch these platforms continue to evolve.
I mean, it's enraging, really, and it's terrifying. And you think to yourself, it is the Wild West. You referenced the fact that you have other countries and there seems to be a real difficulty, maybe a lack of rules or it's too difficult to sort of police it properly. But even with Twitter, and I use that just because I have actually tapped into their, reporting functions where I've seen someone, talk about killing someone or outrageous things, or someone's impersonating someone who I know that person and I want to help them get an account back or get Twitter involved somehow. And I'll get the message back, oh yeah, we've checked and sorry, that did not contravene any of our rules. And I thought, what the hell are the rules then? It doesn't seem like there are are any rules.
Well, we're allowing these companies to make up the rules as they go along and to implement reporting systems that, quite frankly, are inadequate. And I've had very similar experiences when I've reported content across a range of platforms, including X as well as those controlled by Meta. And you'll get a notification back, often within minutes, because it's an automated response. It's not like there's a human
Right.
sitting there. It's software, and it will tell you that they looked into it, and yeah, everything is fine. We're not going to be removing it. We're not going to be sanctioning it. We're not going to be delisting it, or that individual will continue to be able to operate as they have on the platform. And there's no consequence to that because there are no laws that require these companies to behave in any different way. From, Mark Zuckerberg's or Elon Musk's perspective, they don't want any tools in place that reduce engagement. That affects their bottom line. It compromises how we use the platform, and it means less traffic, which means less revenue. So their responsibility is primarily to their shareholders, and all they care about is, is our network growing? Are people spending more time on it? Are you making more money off of every user? And because we don't have laws that punish the Elon Musks and the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world for behaving in this way, for releasing a dangerous product that deliberately spreads extremism and hate speech, they will continue to behave in that way until the legislative landscape changes. And so this is where, big tech, if we allow them to make up the rules as they go along, they will always lean toward profitability, even if it means that the rest of society goes to heck in a handbasket.
And why the hell are there no rules? I mean, where's the Canadian government, the American government, governments around the world? How come we just let a bunch of tech bros set the table and go, we're going to do what works best for us, and we don't care about laws, and we don't care about, your safety on a platform?
Our governments have always twiddled their thumbs when it comes to tech-centric legislation. A technology is introduced, it races ahead, and then the government struggles to keep up, to introduce specific laws around those specific technologies that would protect Canadians from abuses around or using those very technologies. So look no further than artificial intelligence. We had a law that was working its way through the House of Commons. It was a bill, the AI and Data Act, that died on the docket when Parliament was prorogued in 2025. Same thing with online harms. That would have allowed some kind of legislative framework around protecting Canadians and holding the tech companies more accountable than we have. That also died on the docket. The technology continues to advance. The tech companies still behave like tech bros. We still continue to be at risk. Cases like Tumblr Ridge, where the shooter literally used an AI chatbot to plan a mass shooting, and the company did not call the police when it became aware of this. There was no sanction to that. The CEO, Sam Altman, sent an apology, which is just utterly ridiculous. But he's not going to have to pay for that corporate, won't even call it a mistake. It's corporate ignorance, corporate arrogance. There is no consequence to any of that. And we're still in a position where if another Tumblr Ridge happens in future, there is nothing that Canadians can do because there's no law that will hold these companies to account. It is absolutely beyond sickening that we haven't prioritized this as a country and that we're not putting more pressure on our governments to act.
And the only good thing is the families, individual families who were impacted in terrible ways by this mass shooting that was easily foreseeable, they're suing Open AI. And there have been several new lawsuits launched here. I've also heard ones in the States where young people were using, chat and what have you to help them plan their own deaths and like as a suicide advisor. This is outrageous that they are allowed to do this. In the case of the Tumblr Ridge situation, staff, it did flag, this is a problem. Staff brought it to upper executives who said, yeah, okay, we're going to just leave that. That pisses me right off.
Yeah. As a parent, as a member of my community, it was enraging then. It's enraging now to think that senior leadership went to their employees who were begging them, call the police, tell them that this is what happened. And they still sat on it, did nothing. And then this happened, that the shooter went and after the first account was disabled, went and created a second account and continued to use ChatGPT to plan the shooting with the company's essentially permission. It defies belief. it defies logic, and it defies all ethics and morals. And it suggests that the leaders of these companies have no moral compass whatsoever, and are perfectly happy to throw billions of end users to the wolves if it means that they will continue to grow. And so this is why we need better laws in place, and this is why the families of the Tumblr Ridge victims are heroes for deciding to take their grief and channel it in a way that might drive positive change. And I'm hoping that people in Ottawa are watching this going, you know what, we need to make this a priority. We're starting to see, provinces, so Manitoba, Ontario, Nova Scotia, are saying they will start to restrict usage of these platforms to provide better protections to marginalized users, particularly younger users. We're starting to see that momentum build, but in the absence of a national comprehensive legislative framework, we're relying on grieved families who have already suffered the greatest losses of all to carry this fight, when, quite frankly, it should be our elected officials who are leading the charge.
Absolutely. And I agree. I think that social media has advantages. It can be fun. And maybe as an adult, you can be more mindful about how you use it. But then you have young people and developing minds and bullying and all kinds of things where you have someone who's 13 or 14 that has free access to Instagram or Snapchat or whatever, TikTok. I think that it makes sense to have a ban, but I'm not sure how you enforce it. As we saw with ChatGPT, the Tumblr Ridge shooter just cancel their account and set up another one. I don't trust the tech bros to create a system that could actually block teenagers from getting in. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't trust them as far as I can throw them, because again, if they don't have to, they won't, and they certainly won't act in our best interest. We're seeing a lot of that play out down under in Australia, where they did enact a national ban for social media in December of 2025, and we're seeing, even though they've managed to disable close to 5 million accounts, so roughly the same number of accounts disabled as there are kids, despite the fact that kids always have multiple accounts across multiple platforms, but at least they're making an initial dent. We're also hearing anecdotal stories of kids who are bypassing it, using virtual private networks to pretend to be in other countries so they can continue to use the platforms, using their parents or their older siblings' government-issued ID to trick the age verification technology into thinking that they're older than they are, even following older users and speaking like old users so that the AI believes that they aren't under the age of 16. So it is an incomplete, bans are an incomplete and imperfect solution. And I think we need to recognize that. We have to sort of set our expectations accordingly, lower them somewhat. But as a starting point to reining in this problem, and at least putting the tech companies on notice that you've been operating with impunity for years, that's going to stop. And we're going to start with a ban, recognizing that it isn't the be-all, end-all response, but we're going to start with it anyway, and we'll go from there, because the status quo is not acceptable to society. And we can't keep having cases where, kids talk with chatbots and then, decide to end their lives and no one is held accountable. We can't keep having cases where, chatbots are encouraging people and telling them how to carry out a mass shooting, and they're doing so with impunity. We can't allow this to continue. And if it starts with a ban, then so be it. At least it gets everyone around the table, gets them talking, and it gets them to realize that we probably should have prioritized this years ago, but, better late than never.
Absolutely. And the other good thing about a ban is that I'm curious to know if you think there really legitimately is something like a social media addiction, and if you think that it can be addictive to some people, and this is a problem, especially if you have a developing mind and a teenager, why do you think it's harmful?
I think we're starting to see the research pile up. And in fact, we have seen correlations between use of social media and addictive personalities, and that there is a connection between the two. And as time goes on, we see more research that validates that. So, yeah, and particularly among young people who haven't yet developed the kinds of protective behaviors that can help them navigate these technically shark-infested waters, to resist the addiction, to sort of recognize the signs of addiction and then take appropriate action to address that addiction. And so, Mark Zuckerberg once described reactions on the platform, so things like likes and that, he described them as little hits of dopamine. So you post something, and then that engagement within the community is what keeps you coming back. You're waiting for it. You're refreshing your feed. You don't want to feel like you're missing out. That fear of missing out is very much a thing. There are psychological bases for all of these things, and there's enough evidence that suggests, yeah, social media addiction is a thing. It is problematic. It is pulling our kids in. It is harming them. It's time for us to recognize what that is, devote more research resources to it, but more importantly, make sure that we have resources around the community so that we can deal with it more effectively than we have. I think up until now, a lot of parents and a lot of community members and educators and other stakeholders in the community have sort of felt, kids are tech savvy. They'll just figure it out. We're not tech savvy. We're old adults. What do we know? Let the kids figure it out and we'll be fine. Well, we're seeing enough evidence. They're not fine. They need better resourcing and better support. And either we provide it to them now or the crisis that we're in now is only going to get worse.
What advice would you give parents then in the absence of kind of uniform social media bans for teenagers?
Be there for them. And I think you're right. We need to recognize the government isn't going to fix this. They're not going to introduce a law and then magically everything will be okay. And I think the sad truth is that this kind of thing, and I say this as a parent of 3, is that it starts and ends in the home. And so kids' attitudes toward technology will be formed by what they see and what they learn and what they glean from mom and dad and every other caregiver and authority figure in their life. And so if we're modeling the appropriate behaviors around using mobile devices and social media platforms and AI platforms, then we're modeling a positive example for our kids to follow. So be there for your kids. Have those conversations with your kids. Know what apps they're using, know who they're connecting with, set up or make sure that you're cultivating a trust-based relationship so they know they can come to you with any questions they may have, and that you'll never blame them, you'll never punish them. It will be we called in our house a no judgment zone for our kids, so that they knew they could come to us with anything, and literally anything, and we would not laugh at them. We would not send them to their room. We would not take their devices away. We would have a conversation about what they were seeing and how we could help navigate it together. Regardless of what happens externally, regardless of where governments go, and the hope is that they continue to provide new laws, new resources that help families figure this out. It still starts and ends in the home, and parents need to recognize the days of simply handing a device over to your kids and saying, "Okay, off you go," and then just assuming that everything is okay. Those days are over, and you've got to be on that journey with them and make sure that their use of the technology is open and transparent to you. That way, when you see things happening, you're in a position to do something about it. The instant that kids sort of feel like they can't come to you, that's when they go underground. That's when they get into even more trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I totally hear what you're saying there. Is there, we started the conversation talking about how X, or Twitter as I still call it, is kind of the worst of the worst right now for a bunch of different reasons. Are there any social media platforms right now that are getting it right, or you would consider to be safer than Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, the only social media that works for me is, getting together with your friends in the park. There is no such thing as safe social media. And some platforms, so for example, like Roblox or Minecraft, deliberately market themselves as, kind of gaming and social platforms explicitly for kids. And a lot of parents believe, well, if my kid is on a kid-focused platform, then they must be safer because they're kids. Well, the reality is predators know that this is where kids hang out, so that's where they target them. So the sad irony of social media is, as so-called safer platforms have been released and cultivated, they have in fact become even bigger threats. And because we don't see that threat, it's even more worrisome for our kids. And so there's no such thing as safe social media. In any case, it's like the streets. You want to digitally street-proof your kids, you send them out there. Maybe they can be out in a safe neighborhood, but bad things can still happen there. And I think the same logic applies to social media, because there will always be a bad actor somewhere who will target your child in some way, or there may be just other forms of toxicity that they will encounter in these broad-based environments. You can't always count on the multitude of strangers to do right by your kid. And it's our belief that some platforms are safer than others that can get us into trouble.
What do you think the future of social media is going to look like in, even 5 years, 10 years?
I'm kind of hoping the future of social media is no future at all. We're
Really?
about 20, yeah, we're about 20 or 25 years into the era of social media. So the first platform started appearing around the beginning of the millennium. And, Facebook was introduced in 2004, Twitter was launched in 2006. We're about a generation in here, and it's safe to say that the social of social media is no longer a thing. Now that algorithms define the environment, there's very little social about it. There's very little content that actually comes from people that you know and trust and admire. So it really has become algorithmically driven, and that is, quite frankly, I think the level of engagement, psychological engagement for most users is on the wane. And I think most of us are starting to look at the amount of time that we spend cultivating these networks on social media and asking ourselves, are we getting appropriate return on investment? Is it worth my time? And increasingly more people, and I'll count myself among them, are looking at that sort of, cost benefit analysis and saying it isn't worth my time and we're spending less. And so looking at my use over the last few years, has been on the wane because I have better things to do with my time. At the same time, we're seeing chatbots increase in popularity. And so time that kids used to spend on social media platforms, increasingly they're shifting that over to chatbots, which introduces a whole new raft of risks to them. And so I think 20 years from now, we're going to be looking at social media in the rear view, that great experiment of creating community in digital spaces didn't quite work out the way we expected.
What concerns you about the chat boxes?
It's they What they do is they're supposed to have guardrails in place that flag you if the conversation goes in a direction that is dangerous. So, for example, if someone starts speaking with a chatbot and the conversation trends toward suicide, for example, ideally protections built into the platform would then stop the conversation and go, you should call the 988 number. You should seek help from a mental health professional. You should speak to your parents, something like that, and say, we're not going to continue this conversation. We've crossed a line. That there would be red lines. Yet, in fact, the danger is that those guardrails either aren't in place or aren't working as designed. And so, in many cases, kids are being allowed to talk about suicide, and they're being allowed to plan mass shootings, and they're being allowed to, figure out how to create a ghost gun and print it out on their 3D printer and do all sorts of things that can get them into trouble, not just in the virtual world, but in the real one. And so in the ideal world, those protections would be in place, that the technology itself would be safer by design, and that there would be sanctions for companies that don't adhere to those minimums. We already have consumer product protection standards for just about everything else that we buy in life. So everything else is regulated in the consumer product space. I find it difficult, if not impossible, to believe why the same logic is not applying to digital tools like AI chatbots, that they should be regulated to the same degree, and there should be federally mandated standards around how these protections should be in place to ensure that these incredibly powerful tools aren't misused and aren't exposing us unnecessarily to danger.
Amen. Am I hearing you correctly that you feel in this moment social media, the platforms are irretrievably broken, basically, and that the tech bros are not going to be able to or want to fix them or provide a safer environment for us all?
I hate to be cynical, but that's exactly how I feel. I feel they're irredeemable. I look to someone like Sam Altman, he's co-founder of OpenAI, and OpenAI's original mission was to be a not-for-profit to ensure safe, ethical development of AI technology. And so that was its mission statement. And look where we are now, where, they essentially shrug their shoulders when somebody uses their product to, shoot up a school in a community. So, the ideals that this industry were founded on, the leaders of said industry, those tech bros, have shown very clearly they don't care about ideals, and nothing is going to make them change. Even the world's most powerful legislation is not going to rein them back in. All they see is profit and growth. And quite frankly, all OpenAI cares about is their initial public offering scheduled for later this year. And they will fight tooth and nail against anything that threatens that, even if it means allowing their technology to be more dangerous than it probably ought to be. So no, I think it's irretrievable. And frankly, none of us should be trusting anything coming out of Silicon Valley at this point.
So if you weren't a social media technology expert, would you just be done? Do you stay on it because you have to keep up with what's happening?
Yeah, the only reason that I use it is because of my work, and every time I do so, I do so with almost like my hands on like pinching my nose because I know that I kind of understand and appreciate what I'm getting myself into. So, yeah, if I didn't work in technology, if I didn't write about it, if I didn't speak about it, I would probably very happily turn all of my accounts off and then find some better things to do with my time every day. I find the psychological load of going through my feeds and seeing what's going on and seeing the kind of toxicity that they encourage and celebrate. I find that very difficult to live with. And so, yeah, I've made that deal with myself. But if I ever change careers, the first thing I do is turn off all of my accounts and move on.
Wow, I'm going to leave it there because my brain is exploding with a bunch of thoughts, in regards to my own association and relationship with social media, which you are changing my mind in a big way, actually. And this is a fascinating and a really important conversation. And thank you for gutting out the nasty, toxic hellhole that is social media to make sure that you're, educating and advising and keeping the rest of us as safe as possible. Carmi Levy, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciated this conversation.
I so appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, Linda. Thank you so much for having me.
Wow. Like that is honestly a conversation that has expanded my mind and really made me think. So let's bring producer Mel Nagy back into this conversation for a bit of a debrief. I mean, as I'm sitting and stewing and thinking, what did you think?
It was a fascinating conversation, and I was just following and listening to everything you were both saying. And by the end of the conversation, particularly when he declared no future for social media, and then talked about then this next reiteration with these chatbots. I felt sad. I felt sad that this place with an original idea of where people could come together to connect, share knowledge, get to know new people, visit new countries, because that's what you can do on social media, that it has just been, as he said, turned into a hellscape. And I so appreciated your conversation, and I really appreciated his honest, clear, and calm take on it. It's a hot button issue, and he just delivered all the information, I thought, in an accessible way.
Oh, he 100% did. And for me, I kind of feel like you said you felt sad. My overwhelming emotion after that conversation was I'm pissed off. I am pissed off when I realize, as he nails home for me the idea that these tech bros and, who are worth hundreds of billions, and yet they still are doing things to make more money, more money, more money. How much money is enough? And the manipulation that they are deliberately trying to rile people up for clicks, for profit. The fact that they're not bringing in rules, they're not moderating the platform, they're not going after bad actors when they know they're actually helping facilitate bad behavior. I'm pissed off. And that's why, oh boy, I've really changed I really have changed my mind about this because I was
talk
about
to me
to
about
say,
that. I heard you say that. And I was like, she changed her mind. What does that mean?
well, I guess I'm still thinking about it real time because I changed my mind around the idea of that, damn it, I want to be here when Elon Musk is gone. I'm going to be the last woman standing and we'll have a return to civility. After the conversation with Carmi, I actually think things are probably going to get worse. And he talked about social media and these platforms as being a time waster, a time suck.
Yeah.
I have wasted thousands of hours. I've also, in the beginning, I got more out of it. I'm getting less out of it. And I do think that I am tippy-toeing into maybe an addiction. And it is a great place for me to see news. And I still see the value in that. But I also now kind of feel like I am contributing to an unhealthy platform that is harming people instead of helping. And that the number of people who I met on social media, and there are still lots of good people, the conversations I've had that have been beneficial, those are getting fewer and fewer and fewer. And more of it is just something that makes me enraged and manipulated. And so am I going to cancel my account? I am closer than I have ever been. And I wonder if I might just hit pause and lock it down for 6 months and see what happens. See if, oh, glory be, somebody, came to their senses and created laws. That's not going to happen in 6 months. But I also want to monitor my own behavior in those 6 months. How much free mind space, how much chill, calm, zen do I get from not wasting this much time on those platforms? That's kind of,
I so appreciate your honesty and those feelings. But here's a challenge. We are in a platform where we are podcasting and sharing information and doing, having these conversations. The whole construction around it is on a social media. We post to Apple, we post to
Right.
Spotify, we post to
Yeah.
YouTube to tell people this exists. It's not like we can put ads in the newspaper or just, I guess we can email our networks when we have new episodes, but it is still a place. I don't know any other vehicle to share, and we're sharing our podcast with people. So anyways, it's an interesting place because we are by what we're doing, we're in the space. So that's giving me something to think about as well.
Well, now I honestly loved that conversation.
Yeah.
That was a fabulous guest. So off to the next. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda. And thank you for sharing. As always, it was a great conversation and you were curious, and it just always inspires me to be curious as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Mel makes a really good point about the fact that are we contributing to the hellhole that is these social media platforms by participating in the podcast space? I think that at least in the interim, and I'm talking about the next couple of months, I'm going to see myself as wearing the white hat on social media, that we are trying to use it for good, not for evil, to inform, educate, and connect versus to stir up hatred, confusion, and spread misinformation. So, now even as I say it, it feels wank. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm very seriously in the next couple of weeks going to consider putting my account on a lockdown and then doing some big soul searching. But I'll tell you what, I have changed my mind, and I don't know if you did. Maybe you find more value in social media than I have in the last couple of years, but stay tuned, as they say, and stay curious. I will talk to you again soon.